What is up, my fellow subscribers, viewers, listeners, and all of the above to the second episode of the Kid Kritic Movie Podcast, where we talk about movies and all that other fun stuff. And look, if you thought last episode was amazing, this episode is going to be even more amazing. Is that the even correct way of saying amazing? Probably not, but that's the way Kid Kritic says it. And we got a packed show today because, today is July 4th. Well, at least the day that I'm recording this is July 4th. We're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff. I heard Little Mermaid cast some person. I heard The Flash might get some It director. We're going to get down into some Spider-Man Far From Home spoilers. That is right. We're going to do an in-depth Spider-Man Far From Home spoiler review. And that's going to kind of be like the main thing of today. We're going to have a review of Stranger Things Season 3. That is right. I binged the whole thing, and we're going to definitely talk about that. And we're going to talk about some other fun stuff. I picked up some Blu-rays, and I got a new pop. It's going to be great, and I cannot wait. So without further ado, let's start this podcast. Alright guys, now we got all that intro and nonsense that we all love out of the way. Let's start and get down to it. And the first thing I want to talk about, alright, so I had a conversation with somebody, two people actually, and I forgot how we even started talking about this. I think we were talking about TV shows, and I started talking about Chernobyl, because Chernobyl's a great show. I even talked about that last episode, and then we were talking about Game of Thrones and all that. But we started talking about how, can you compare movies of different genres? Now, when you really think about it, it's a complex question. It really is. Now, I'm on the side, I'm like, yes, you can compare movies no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's a movie about a room, and you can compare it to a movie about World War II. You can compare those movies. I really think you can. And I made the argument of, look, you can compare the climax to Star Wars A New Hope and compare that climax to the climax of Gladiator. You can compare both of those. Or you can compare the climax to Schindler's List to the climax of Big. Two very different movies, but you can still compare the movies. You can compare genres, which one you like better, which one makes you more depressed. Obviously, depressing and dramas make you more depressed, or which movies make you laugh more. Comedy movies obviously do that, and I do think you can compare movies. Now, I see why somebody would say that you can't, because you'll be like, what, Star Wars? You can't compare Star Wars to Toy Story. Star Wars is about lightsabers and space and everything. Toy Story is about toys. And yes, you can compare both of them. You could be like, oh, the climax was better here, the conclusion was better there, the characters were better in Star Wars, the characters were better in Toy Story, the villain was better in Star Wars. Oh no, the villain was worse in Toy Story than it was in Star Wars. So you can kind of see that you can compare movies or genres, I should say, there. So I thought that was actually a pretty good topic to talk about, and a pretty good discussion as well that you can have among with other people, because it can go anywhere. I see why somebody would say movie genres can't be compared, but as I've said before, genres can be compared, and with the examples I've given. Now, today, as I'm recording this, it is 4th of July. 4th of July, it is American Independence Day, if you guys did not know, if you don't live in the United States of America. Now, I've heard people who have a tradition of watching Independence Day, obviously, on Independence Day, and I have the movie, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think that's a fantastic tradition. But I have a pretty funny / sad 4th of July story. Now, one 4th of July, there's a big fireworks show where I live, and it's pretty popular, and obviously I went there because it's 4th of July, fireworks, I think they go together, right? So we went there, and I had to wait so many hours because so many people there. I think I waited 3 hours. It was absolutely crazy. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, oh my god, is this going to start soon? Now, it's a great fireworks show. It really is. And I'm just waiting there and waiting there and waiting there. And it's just like, okay, is this ever going to start? And it did. And it ended in 10 seconds. So I was waiting there for hours and hours and hours. This is what happened. Now, I don't know if some malfunction happened, but basically all the fireworks went up at once. Just boom. It was like a big explosion. It looked like the Michael Bay movie. Like, it was a huge explosion. It was like, whoa, like that sounded like a nuclear bomb just went off. It felt like Danny McBride and Tropic Thunder. It was just like, boom! Because I just saw Tropic Thunder. So funny. But it's like he was like, boom! And just exploded everything. He's like, yeah! And I was like, that was cool. But, I mean, I don't really think I would want to wait hours and hours for that. I mean, like, what the heck? So yeah, that's my 4th of July story. I hope everyone out there had a great 4th of July. Obviously grilling, eating some burgers, some hot dogs, watching the fireworks. Hopefully what happened to me didn't happen to you. I had a fantastic 4th of July, obviously. Picked up some movies today, actually, on 4th of July, and I guess we'll hop into that. Now, this week, I did pick up some stuff. I'll start off with the Blu-rays. Like, look, I love my physical media. I said that also last episode on the podcast. I love my physical media, and I picked up some steelbooks. I love steelbooks. Like, they are the best. There are some bad ones, just like there are bad things of every topic, but there are some phenomenal ones, and I picked up some great ones today. Now, the first thing I picked up, and it's kind of new. It came out not too long ago, I think like a month ago or so. And that is the Toy Story 1, to be specific. Toy Story 1 Steelbook on 4K. Either though I can't play 4K movies, but the Steelbook was just so cool. I just needed to have it. I got it at Best Buy, and it's the artwork is fantastic, and it's basically Buzz and Woody with the toy aliens looking up at the claw, and the Toy Story logo at the top. Fantastic artwork. You can search it up on the Googles or on the Best Buy website. And then on the back, you have the Pixar ball, obviously, with the star and the blue stripe, and it is great. I love this steelbook, and I'm glad I purchased it. And another steelbook I picked up today on the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July to Kid Kritic, is the Kingsman, the Secret Service steelbook. Now, this came out a long time ago, and I've been tempted for the longest time to get this. Now, it's only an exclusive to Best Buy. I forgot what type of steelbook. I don't know if it's like some edition or something, but the artwork on this, like, I love artwork on steelbooks. The artwork on the Kingsman steelbook is brilliant, and I love Kingsman: The Secret Service. It is such a great action movie. Second one, not so much, but Kingsman: The Secret Service, such a fantastic movie with a fantastic steelbook. You got Taron Egerton on there. You got Michael Caine. You got Samuel Jackson in there. You got Sofia Boutella in there. You also got Colin Firth in there, looking sharp as ever, and I love this movie. It is a brilliant movie, and if you guys have not seen Kingsman: The Secret Service, it is fantastic. Actually based off of a comic book, if you didn't know. Now, the last steelbook I picked up on Independence Day was Independence Day. Now, this steelbook is just absolutely brilliant. Now, the cover of it, it's also exclusive to Best Buy, by the way. Now, the cover of it is basically a jet flying into the alien warcraft with Independence Day on the bottom, and it looks fantastic. It looks brilliant. I love it. And then on the back, you got Will Smith standing there strong because he just beat up some aliens with a crashed alien ship in the background just burning, and it looks pretty sexy. And I love this steelbook. I love all these steelbooks I picked up. All these steelbooks are exclusive to Best Buy, so if you want to check it out, I'm sure it's on their website or probably in store if you want to see it. Now, I also picked up one other thing. I was actually given these two things, and by caring people. Now, the first thing I got given, or somebody gave me, is a brand called Q-Figs. Now, if you guys don't know what they are, they're basically like little tiny figures, and they make like Marvel figures, Stranger Things figures, probably DC figures. They make a bunch of other cool stuff, and I'd say it depends what you're getting, how much they are, but the one that I got was about $17. Now, let me reach for it here. Now, what I got is from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is a movie I'm not a huge fan of, but it's basically Rocket with his blasters and everything, looking mean as ever, with Baby Groot on his head, just smiling and laughing it up because there's chaos around it, and Baby Groot loves his chaos. And it is a fantastic figure. I think Q-Fig, even though this is actually my first one, but there's been some cool ones, like the Thor Ragnarok ones is amazing. They have one piece of Thor running and jumping, and then you can get the other piece of Gladiator Hulk, and you can put them together and jumping at each other, obviously from the movie when they have their amazing fight, and you put them together, and those just look amazing. And I'm sure I'm going to get that pretty soon. Now, something else that that's the same person gave me, then those caring people out there, is a pop. Now let me get this. And I got the Avengers Endgame Hulk, where he has the Iron Man gauntlet, I'd say. And speaking of the Iron Man gauntlet, I've heard people say, they're like, what, Tony Stark, while he is a genius, he's only human, and he was able to make a gauntlet in like a day, where Thanos and those elves just took forever to make them, and a normal human was able to make a gauntlet to hold the Infinity Stones in one day. I mean, I even thought, I'm like, that's kind of true. But anyways, this pop is really, really, really cool. Obviously, it shows Hulk. He even got some gray hairs in there. Hulk is getting old. By the way, speaking of Hulk, I saw the post-credit scene that they showed for the re-release, although it's not really a re-release, of Hulk. And it's a Hulk end credit scene. I mean, it was fine. I don't think it's horrible like I've heard some people say. And if you guys haven't seen the end credit scene, it's on YouTube, leaked or whatever. Spoilers for this end credit scene. And basically at the end of it, Hulk is like, Steve, who? I mean, obviously it's probably Steve Rogers or whatever, but I had no clue what that really meant. He just saved some people, and the leaked version that I saw, the person that was recording it illegally, just started cracking up when they saw the Hulk that obviously didn't have finished visual effects, and I mean, whatever. But the end credit scene was, it wasn't horrible, but I mean, I don't want to pay to see that. I'm sure it's going to be on the Blu-ray, which I can't wait because I'm going to pre-order that Avengers Endgame Steelbook, which comes out in August. So anyways, that's what I picked up this week. Got some great stuff. Now, I went down a rabbit hole the other day. I saw like a bunch of these parodies. Like I saw Toy Story but Infinity War style, and I watched them like, man, these are great. And then I ran into this video where it had the opening of Saving Private Ryan of D-Day, obviously, which is one of the greatest war film openings of all time, if not the greatest war film opening of all time. And I'd even put it up there as one of the greatest films in general openings of all time. And Saving Private Ryan is my favorite war film of all time. But basically, what they did is they showed the Saving Private Ryan opening scene, and they brought the music from the intro of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when Groot is basically dancing around and everything, and put it on in the intro of Saving Private Ryan when they're on D-Day and everybody's just getting slaughtered. Whoa! But they put that in the opening credits, in the opening scene. Oh my gosh! It is, whoever put that together is just like, what? Like, what is going through their brain? Because you have that song and you put it in there, and it just beholds me how somebody just thought of that. Now, it was sad, obviously, because it was D-Day and you saw people getting slaughtered, but at the same time, I will admit, it was kind of funny. Now, it's on YouTube. Just search up Saving Private Ryan opening scene with Guardians of the Galaxy music or whatever. But whoever put that together he's just he or she is just an absolute genius. But anyways, yeah, I saw that. And yeah. Now, the first really movie topic I want to talk about. So I hear Dave Bautista is in a little bit of some, no, he's not in some trouble, but he said some words that I don't think he should have said. So basically, this is what went down. So headlines went out, oh, Dave Bautista casts shade on the Fast and the Furious franchise. Now, usually I'm like, I don't know, is that some clickbait or something? And then I looked at his Twitter, and somebody put that The Rock and somebody messaged him on Twitter that John Wick, oh my god, that The Rock and John Cena will get a Fast and the Furious spinoff also, and Dave Bautista will be the villain. And somebody just suggested that and sent it to Dave Bautista, and then he responded with, "Thank you for your consideration," and put a bunch of vomit faces. Now, I was watching this one show where the guy was like, look, maybe he's just fooling around, and maybe we hear Dave Bautista is casted in the next Fast and the Furious movie, and the next Fast and the Furious spin-off movie. Maybe he's playing around. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, we've seen that before. But let's put that aside for a moment. If he's not playing around. I've said this before, especially when the Leslie Jones comments came out about the Ivan Reitman Ghostbusters movie coming out next year, which looks like it's being put together amazingly, obviously, with the new casting of Paul Rudd. And I said this when that came out on Talking Movies. Make sure you watch those episodes. I'm not doing them anymore for now. But I'm like, look, everybody has their moments where they just talk and talk and talk, and then, oops, I probably shouldn't have said that. Now, this was probably Dave Bautista's moment, because he shouldn't have said this. And I hear he's the humblest of human beings on planet Earth, and I've seen interviews with him, and he just looks like a delightful human being. He looks delightful. He looks like Jax the Destroyer in real life. He's amazing and funny and caring, but he'll destroy you if he wants to. Now, I don't know. He shouldn't have said this. I don't think he should have, because obviously it looks bad on him. And, what if Fast and the Furious producers or directors are looking at him like, oh, let's cast Dave Bautista. And then he says these comments like, ooh, nope. And then maybe other producers of other movies will be like, oh, man, are we not good enough for Dave Bautista? Now, I have a fun time with the Fast and the Furious franchise. I thought the first three, however, just absolutely stink. And then the fourth one was alright. And then 5, 6, and 7 I thought are really good. And 8 I had a decent time with. But he shouldn't have said this. He just shouldn't have. Because it looks bad on him, and so on and so forth. Now let's move on to the next topic. Now I'm kind of zoomed through this one because I don't have much to say about this one, and that is Little Mermaid gets a new casting, and it's a singer, not an actor or actress, and she goes by the name of Halle Bailey. And it's funny because when I saw this notification pop up, I'm like, Halle Berry's Little Mermaid? What? And then I read it, I'm like, oh no, that's not Halle Berry. Now, the reason why I say I have really nothing much to say about this is because she's a singer. I mean, I haven't really seen her in any movies or TV shows or commercials or any of that, so I don't really know much of her acting chops, so to say. So, I don't know, maybe she's great. That's why I don't want to say, oh, they got a singer? Are you serious right now? I don't know. Maybe she's just one of the best actresses ever. Maybe she's the next Meryl Streep. Who knows? Or maybe she might be the worst choice ever. But I'm like, alright. I mean, obviously she can sing if she's a singer. But I mean, I don't know. We'll see. And yeah, that's what I basically have for that. And I didn't really talk about this last episode, but they also casted Melissa McCarthy for Ursula, which I think is a brilliant choice. And I can't wait for her to sing those songs. They also casted Jacob Tremblay for Flounder, which is also a brilliant choice, and I do think this movie is being put together really well. Hopefully, Halle Bailey is good as Little Mermaid. And Little Mermaid is, one of my favorite princess movies of all time. I have it top 2 with Beauty and the Beast. I think it's a fantastic movie. Look, we've also seen other situations where it's like they bring on an actress that doesn't have much experience in the acting industry, I had to say, and you've seen that with Daisy Ridley, who played Rey, and she was only been on a set for like 2 weeks, I think it was, and then she comes in for Force Awakens and absolutely knocks it out of the park as Rey, and now she's a huge star. This might be the same case, so you never know. Now, with that said, let's move on to the next topic I would like to talk about, and that is The Flash. The Flash is just flashing through many directors, isn't it? Yeah, let's pretend I never said that. But anyways, Flash loses and gains a director. The Flash So basically, reports came out that said It director Andy Muschietti, who is a fantastic filmmaker. I loved what he did with it. I did not see Mama, however, but I've heard mostly good things. I heard it was actually a pretty good horror film. Now, I loved what he did with it, so obviously, if they get... Well, he's in talks. That's what I said. He's in talks. Now, they're probably talking contracts, money, scheduling. I mean, I don't know. The whole enchilada. I don't know what they're talking about. So this can go south. This can go north, or whatever. So he's in talks, and I think that's a great thing because I love Andy Muschietti. And then they also got a writer in Christina Hudson who wrote Bumblebee, which, if you guys didn't know, I love Bumblebee. It's my favorite Transformers movie. Now, it's not very hard to beat to be the best Transformers movie, but she wrote Bumblebee, which is a fantastic movie, and she's also writing Birds of Prey, which is, I'm not excited for it, but I'm very curious to see it. And the report also said Ezra Miller is still on the project. Now, the last time we heard news about The Flash is that Ezra Miller was going to write his own script, which was just, it made me hit the panic button, because an actor has zero clue, unless they practice or however, but I don't know if Ezra Miller knows how to write a script. Ezra Miller knows how to act, and I enjoyed him as The Flash, but as far as I've seen, he doesn't know how to write a script. I mean, maybe he does, but as somebody who doesn't know him, as far as I know, he's never written a script, and it's obviously very different from being an actor. Now, they ended up throwing it away. Warner Brothers did. But he's still on the project, which I'm surprised about, but for all we know, tomorrow they're going to announce Ezra Miller is out as the Flash. And we've seen this before. Ben Affleck, he was out, I think he was on Jimmy Fallon, I believe, where he's like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to be Batman or whatever. Or no, it's Comic-Con, where he's like, I'll be an ape for Matt Reeves. And then what happens? Ben Affleck is out as Batman. And yeah, and I love Ben Affleck as Batman, by the way. So I don't see Ezra Miller staying as the Flash, sadly, because I really enjoyed him as the Flash, but I just don't see it. And the Flash, now like, you can say all you want about Batman, it's definitely had some huge problems, obviously, but the Flash has just been in the dumpster when it comes to problems. This is like just been through every situation ever. Now, we've seen movies come out of huge situations like Solo, like other films, like I've heard somebody say World War Z, which was also another one. Now we've heard Rogue One, you can also say. So we've seen movies that have had huge problems end up being good, and this could be another one. And if Andy Muschietti ends up being directing, I think it could be really cool. Now, this is like, okay, when it says Flash is now in production, that's like, okay, we're going to get this Flash movie. It's like, I got to see it to believe it sort of situation going on here. All right, now that we got all that topic out of the way, let's talk some Stranger Things Season 3. Now, I talked about Stranger Things for a quick second last episode of the podcast, and I said I've enjoyed the last two seasons. I thought the first season was awesome. I liked the second season more than most people. Now that I think about it, I don't put it on par with the first season, but I still quite enjoy that second season, and more than most people still. I still like that second season. So heading into the third season, I was really excited for. I liked the trailers very, very much. Now, this is a non-spoiler review of Season 3 of Stranger Things, and I'm only keeping it to the trailers, which is going to be very hard because the trailers kind of kept it vague, because there's a lot of things that happen in this season. So I binged the whole season. I even stayed up till midnight to watch the first episode, and then I went to sleep and I woke up and I binged the rest. And look, I loved this season of Stranger Things. It's definitely better than the second season, which I quite enjoyed. And I love the first season, but Stranger Things Season 3 is probably my favorite season of Stranger Things we've had. I loved this season of Stranger Things. It has a couple of issues, but this season of Stranger Things was awesome, and it just adds to the amount of great television that we've had this year. This season was just packed with emotion, mostly towards the end. That last episode is just like that is some cry time right there, especially towards the end. It's just like, like that the whole last episode. And then you also have some fantastic comedic moments. There are some great comedic moments. Yeah, sure, there's some that fall flat, but there are some great comedic moments in this season that it was just great. It was great. So one of the villains that they introduced into the mix, when I saw who they're introducing, I was like, oh my goodness. Are they introducing who I think I'm introducing into all this? So I'm like, that's awesome. That is awesome. Whoever thought about this idea is great, especially for the time that the U.S. was in with this specific villain, I'll say, from whoever's perspective you're in. And you'll see what I'm talking about once you watch the show. But I thought it was great that they introduced this villain, I'll say, but definitely a villain of the show. And I thought that was fantastic. Now, the performances are great. Everyone is brilliant. And the thing that I loved about this season, everybody not just had one moment, they had multiple moments, whether it was emotional and comedic, and I thought it all worked. And one character specifically was Zac Efron's twin brother. You know who I'm talking about. It's fun. And he was introduced in season 2, and when I saw him, like, is that Zac Efron? No, it's not Zac Efron. A lot of people actually thought that. His character was really good in this season, far better than he was in season 2. I thought the evolution of his character to the end of the season was just absolutely brilliant and floored me. I actually didn't even think he was going to be a standout of this season, but he was great. Every character was brilliant. Dustin and Steve. I need to talk about that duo. That duo who you spent a good amount of time with this season. Dustin's not really with the main group as much. He's mainly with Steve, and I had no problem with that because their chemistry together was amazing. I would just love to see a spin-off show with just those two. It is awesome. They hit it off as soon as they see each other, and you see in the trailer when they do their handshake. It is awesome. Their relationship is just so great. Obviously, the gang is all together. Mike and Will, I believe the other name, and then you also have Eleven, who is brilliant in this season. Millie Bobby Brown does a fantastic job playing Eleven. And I was thinking, like, Eleven's basically a Jedi without a lightsaber, because the things that she does is just like, oh my god, if she knew how to use a lightsaber, she's basically a Jedi who has a bunch of nosebleeds. And that was another thing that the show kind of addressed, was the nosebleeds, which was definitely a positive part of this show. The theme of this season I thought was really good. It was basically the theme of growing up, which you see in the trailers are like, we're not kids anymore, we're growing up and whatever. And that theme basically stays throughout the whole entire season and addresses that theme of them growing up, and they're not, they're done being kids. They're not kids anymore. They have to grow up. They're on to other things, and that theme stays throughout the whole entire season, I'd say. And I thought it was a great theme for this season. Obviously, you got your 80s nostalgia, which was awesome, and they reference a lot to Back to the Future in this season. And Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies of all time, directed by the great Robert Zemeckis, obviously. And they reference that movie a lot, and I absolutely dug it, and it was fantastic. Now, this movie also gave me lots of questions. Now, especially when it came to that villain that they introduced into the mix. Now, I had a bunch of questions at the end of the season. Now, I'll say this about Season 3 of Stranger Things. This is not a spoiler, but if you just don't want to know anything, just skip 20 seconds into this podcast. And that is Season 3 did open it up to another season. Now, I've heard they were talking about making more seasons of Stranger Things. Now, they definitely did that. I won't say how, because that's obviously a spoiler. Now, so obviously, I'm thinking maybe these questions are answered next season, but because I had a lot of questions from Season 3. And that is it. I loved Season 3 of Stranger Things. The characters, I think, were better than ever. The evolution of all of them were fantastic. There's so many great comedic moments. The 80s nostalgia is there, obviously. The mall is a great setting. I really hope they use the mall again in season 4. And then they obviously introduced some new characters that I thought was great. The relationships were fantastic. I just want to see a Steve and Dustin relationship because they were just so good. The emotional moments were there. And then the relationship between Hopper and Eleven. Oh, it was so good. It carries on from season 2, obviously, since she lives with Hopper. But the relationship was brilliant, and I loved this season. The theme of growing up, I thought, was a beautiful theme for this season, and I absolutely loved season 3 of Stranger Things. I definitely thought it started off a bit slow in the beginning, but I loved this season. I'd probably, if I were to rate it for now, I definitely need to marinate on it because I just finished watching it a couple hours ago. But if I were to rate Stranger Things season 3 as of right now, I'd probably give it like a 4.5 out of 5 Fernies. I'd give season 1 like 4.25 out of 5 Fernies, and season 2 a 4 out of 5 Fernies. Yeah, but I loved this season, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna make another season of Stranger Things, and I cannot wait to see it because I absolutely loved this season of Stranger Things. Things that are strange. Stranger Things. Now let's get on to the final topic that's gonna probably take an hour, and that is Spider-Man Far From Home. That is right now, if you guys don't know by the title or what I've said in the beginning, we are doing an in-depth, that is right, in-depth spoilers review of Spider-Man Far From Home. So if you have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home, go out and watch it. Great movie. And then come back and listen to this Spider-Man Far From Home spoilers review. Now, again, this is a spoilers review. So if you have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home, go watch it. Come back and listen to this in depth. In depth. That's right. We are going in depth of spoiler review of Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, if you guys did not see my review of Spider-Man Far From Home on the Kid Kritic channel, which is up there on the Kid Kritic channel, and if you and make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and go check out that video because it is a darn great review, obviously. So basically, what I said in that review is that I loved Spider-Man Far From Home. I actually put it over Homecoming, which is a great feat to accomplish because I loved Homecoming, and until Spider-Verse was actually my favorite Spider-Man movie, and Far From Home I don't think is better than Spider-Verse. I still have it second as the best, top 2 best Spider-Man movies. So right now I have Spider-Verse number 1, Far From Home number 2, Homecoming number 3, the Raimi Spider-Man 2 at number 4, and then the original Spider-Man at number 5, then Amazing Spider-Man 1 at number 6, which I actually think was a pretty good movie. And then number 7 is an 8. They flip-flop all the time. Is Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2. But who cares about those movies? Because those movies are god-awful. Now, let's get into the spoilers. The juicy spoilers. Alright, so this movie basically starts off with Nick Fury and Maria Hill going into that town in Mexico that is completely destroyed. And they run into an elemental and Mysterio. That is your introduction to Mysterio, folks. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, and he had a fantastic performance in this movie. And the first line, look, Mysterio says some lines in this movie that I'm like, that's a bit on the nose and felt kind of cheesy in a way. Like, this line didn't even work for me in the trailers where he's like, you don't want any part of this. It just felt so weird, and it just didn't work for me in that scene. The scene was great. I love seeing Mysterio in action. I thought he was brilliant when he was in action. And that just felt funky for me. But the scene overall, I thought was a pretty solid scene. And then you have the Marvel logo go up and everything. And then it goes to the In Memoriam. And it shows Tony Stark and Black Widow. But one thing that caught my eye, it said Captain America Steve Rogers. And at the end of Endgame, even though Steve Rogers is old, he's still alive. Now, I don't know if they said, oh, Steve Rogers is dead, but he's still alive, like, in secret, and they just don't know it, or is he actually dead? So I'm like, is he dead, or is he not dead? So I kind of found that odd, but we'll see in the future of Phase 4, which I have so many questions for. And then you go into, so then that's the news at their school, and then you have, like, a bunch of school stuff happened, which the high school stuff in this movie I thought worked very, very well. And then you go to Spidey and Aunt May at that charity event, I believe, and Aunt May already knows who that Peter's Spider-Man, obviously from the end credit scene of Spider-Man Homecoming, where she's like, what the? And then as soon as she's about to drop the F-bomb, it just cuts to the credits. I thought it was a pretty funny end credit scene. Now, I thought this charity event scene was fantastic because, like, Peter Parker's a kid. And that you see that throughout the whole entire movie. He's a kid, and because usually superheroes and their counterparts, like if Bruce Wayne told him to go up and give a speech, he'll probably give the best speech of all time. If they told Tony Stark to go up and say a speech, he'll probably say the best speech of all time. If they told Steve Rogers, hey, give a speech, it'll probably be the best speech of all time because they have experience. Peter Parker doesn't have PR experience, I'd say, because he's a kid. He doesn't know how to talk to the public, to all these reporters, and he goes up there and he's like, yeah, good job, everyone. And then he just like very awkwardly and walks away. And then they go back, and then he's like, oh yeah, we did a great job. And then Aunt May was like, yeah, but you're a little bit awkward there. I thought that was a great scene because he's a kid. And then obviously Happy walks in with the big check of I don't know how many, and then they have that Nick Fury scene that we see in the trailer that I thought worked very, very well. And then you also see that Aunt May and Happy scene where it's just that awkward moment and Peter's just in the middle, and that was a fantastic comedic scene. Now, something that I noticed, and I kind of noticed it by the end of the movie, is that action scene where Peter's in the Iron Spider suit, where he's in the restaurant or whatever fighting those bad guys, that scene is actually not in the movie. And I was like, oh, that's kind of odd, I'd say. And I actually think Tom Holland said it once before, but I don't know. They said that it's going to be like some short story on the Blu-ray, which I'm very excited to see because I'm going to pick up the Blu-ray Steelbook version, of course, because if you haven't, obviously, as you know from this episode of the podcast, I love my Steelbooks. So then he goes on to plan basically his game plan to win MJ's heart. Now, that is amazing. He obviously has help from his friend Ned, and when they're doing that whole plan, he's like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna do that. That was a fantastic moment because he's a kid, he wants that girl. So then he has this plan, MJ's gonna sit right next to me, and la da 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 da, and then it goes south. It just goes absolutely south. And then there's a great comedic scene on the airplane where he goes to the bathroom, he does his business, and he walks out, and she's right there, and he's like, whoa, 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 what the heck? And he just walks back in and locks the door. And then he's like, oh my god, I just left a mess. And he just cleans the whole bathroom. That was a great scene. And then he walks out and sees, I forgot the kid's name, the kid who's kind of being a jerk, I'd say. He was kind of like the jerk of the movie. And he's kind of the person he's in competition with for MJ. And that kid walks up, he's like, oh, hey. He's like, I just cleaned the bathroom for this jerk face that I'm in competition with. And then he just walks in. But that was a fantastic moment. And then once they land, they go all across Europe, go to different places, and I thought those moments worked very well because obviously it mostly focuses on Peter trying to win MJ's heart, but then his trip comes, Peter more specifically, his trip comes to a just complete stop when a man by the name of Nick Fury, or supposedly Nick Fury, stops him, and obviously Peter just avoids him, and you just see him hang up his calls. Oh, Nick Fury, yeah, hang up. And then Nick Fury finds him finally, but before that, actually, I just missed this for some odd reason. There's one of the water elemental comes in, shows up, wrecks shop, and then Mysterio comes in, and then him and Spidey, and then he puts on that mask that he just finds out of nowhere, and then they fight him off, and I thought that was a great action sequence. But anyways, yeah, and then so the Nick Fury moment happens, and he basically introduces Peter to Mysterio, and that's where you learn that Mysterio, even though he was faking it the whole time, he was lying. Mysterio's just a big, fat liar. That's right. And he tells him that he's from Earth, 4 billion kajillions, whatever, and that, and then Peter gets all excited. He's like, "What? A separate universe? Say what? How does that even work?" But and then you find out the whole time that Mysterio is lying, obviously. Now, what I thought they did a great job of showing basically how you see why Peter falls for Mysterio's trap, because Nick Fury's like, "Are you gonna step up or not?" And now you saw when he said that in the trailer. He's like, "Are you gonna take the spot that Tony left you?" Now, I thought they did a great job playing with Tony's death. Not because that plays a huge factor into it, but continuing on with my point, I thought they did a great job of showing how basically Peter falls for his trap. Because if I were to put myself in Peter's shoes, I would that the same thing would have probably happened to me, because Mysterio connects with Peter in a way that nobody has in the movie, like, because Nick Fury's like, "Are you gonna step up and be an Avenger, or are you just gonna be a normal kid?" And Mysterio's like, "Look, man, you're a kid. You want to live this life, but then you want to be a superhero at the same time." And they kind of connect with each other. And I thought that relationship, up to the point when he tricks him, obviously, and that relationship worked very well in the movie. And then, so basically, after that happens, then Nick Fury gives Peter Tony's sunglasses, which I thought was just awesome. And he leaves him that note that I forgot what it said. But anyways, then after that, some shenanigans occurred that I enjoyed the shenanigans that occurred. But then the part, obviously, that stood out was when he calls in the satellite drones because he wants to delete the picture from that jerk face that he's in competition for MJ with, that picture, because he runs into some lady because she's gonna give Peter the stealth suit, which is a great suit. So she gives him the stealth suit, and then she's like, "Take your clothes off." And I turn around, I'm like, "What? They allow this?" And then he finds him and takes a picture. So he's trying to delete that picture, and because or else he's gonna show it to MJ, and that's just gonna cause a bunch of chaos. And then he tries to delete it, and then he calls in the drone, and then he accidentally tells the drone to assassinate him, and he's like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do?" So he makes a distraction, and the part where he jumps out of the bus to destroy the drone, obviously with his sick webs, I thought it was a poor choice of putting slow motion in that part, because that just felt weird and out of place. Like, I don't really think you needed that. But I thought that moment was really, really funny. But at the end of the day, Peter Parker won because he deleted the picture, and he still has a fighting chance to win MJ's heart. So then they reach their last destination. I forgot which destination it was. They went to a bunch of places in Europe, and they're supposed to go to the fair or some carnival that the place that they were at that it's gonna have. But then Mysterio and Peter realize that the fire elemental, which destroyed Mysterio's Earth kajillion gabillion, whatever the number was, the fire elemental is what destroyed his Earth, supposedly. And that the fire elemental was going to show up at that part and then be like, "Oh man, we got to do something about this." But Peter doesn't want his class to be in danger, obviously, because he's such a hero. And Nick Fury finds a way to give them free opera tickets. And that scene was just so funny when they're like, "Oh, the opera. Who likes the opera?" I mean, they're kids. I mean, I don't like the opera. I don't want to go to the opera. I know there's a lot of opera fans out there, but I find the opera to be boring. I'm sorry. If you guys like opera, that's fantastic. And then Ned, Peter's best friend, he's like, he tries to bring out the positive in it because he's trying to help out his friend, so that way, they'll all be safe. And he's like, man, he's basically stating the positive points of the opera, and I thought that was a great comedic moment. Again, lots of great comedic moments. So they go to the opera, and then Peter is about to have his moment with MJ, and MJ's like, "You want to sit next to me?" And he's like, "Oh, yes. And then, but Nick Fury's calling in Peter to obviously be a part of the plan, because he's the lookout of the plan, the lookout for the fire elemental, and then Mysterio will go in and, fight it off, and then Spidey will also help. And then Nick Fury's like, come on, we need your help. And he has to choose between that or MJ. And I thought they did a great job on balancing Peter Parker's life as Spider-Man and Peter Parker's life as Peter Parker. I thought they did a great job on balancing his hero life to his teenage high school life. I thought they did a great job of that because that's all of Spider-Man's thing, is hiding his Spider-Man identity to other people and kind of balancing the superhero life. And that's one of my favorite parts of the Spider-Man character in general. I thought they did a great job with that. And then he obviously ends up going with Nick Fury because, he's a hero. He has to. That's what heroes do. And then him and Mysterio fight off the fire elemental, but it's not a fire elemental. And that fight I thought was also really, really great, but then that fight happens, and then him and Peter and Mysterio have a conversation shortly after at the bar, I believe, and then they kind of have that like heart-to-heart moment when he's like, look, man, I know you're a kid, you're having this hard time choosing of either being an Avenger, one of the lead Avengers, be more specific, or just being a kid. And Mysterio's like, I get that. And I thought that was awesome. I thought the writing for that scene was great. And Peter's like, you know what? You're a great guy. You can handle your own. You did amazing against these elementals, more than I could have done. And he's like, you wanna be an Avenger? And Peter's like, and then Mysterio's like, yeah, sure, I guess I'll be an Avenger. He's like, that's an honor. And then Peter gives him the sunglasses. I thought that whole scene was really, really well done. And Peter's like, I gotta go catch a girl. And then that moment when Mysterio's basically giving him advice on how to get MJ, I thought that was great. Again, you see why Peter falls for his tricks, because he just connects with him so much. And then Peter's like, alright, I gotta go get this girl. And he just leaves. And then as soon as he leaves, the lights go down, and you soon realize all this was all a ruse. It was just all a trick, and this was just all of Mysterio's plan, his mastermind plan to get the Tony Stark sunglasses. And then you find out what his motivation is, and that is Tony Stark fired him, and that he called his plan vomit and all that. So you kind of get his motivation there. It was kind of similar, I would say, to Vultures, where it also had to do with Tony Stark, and so it's kind of similar there. But that scene where he just goes wild, it felt very reminiscent of Nightcrawler, in my opinion. You just saw that Nightcrawler performance come out a little bit, and he just goes nuts and starts drinking and all that. And then, so after that, Peter goes with MJ, and then that's when MJ finds out, or guesses, that Peter is Spider-Man. Now, I really liked that because it showed more of the connection that Peter and MJ have, and it builds more of the chemistry. And I thought their chemistry together was really well done in the movie. I also said that in my non-spoilers review. I thought the relationship was really well done, and I thought that scene on the bridge was awesome. And then you find out that she was at the fight scene of Spider-Man and Mysterio at the fire elementals, and you see that obviously in the fight scene that MJ is also there, and she ends up picking up one of the drones, like lights or recording things, I don't know what to call it, camera or whatever, and it basically shows a hologram of basically showing that the whole thing Mysterio, what Peter Parker thought Mysterio was. He was a completely different person. He was an evil human being trying to take over the world, and Peter's like, oh my gosh, I messed up. I gotta tell Nick Fury about this. And then he's like, I gotta go. And then MJ's like, oh, okay. And then MJ just runs with them, and then they run into Ned, obviously, who is his best friend, and then they tell him everything, and that it's about to go down. And I thought the dialogue between MJ and Ned and she's like, yeah, I found out he was Spider-Man on my own. And Ned's like, I knew he was Spider-Man the longest. I thought that was a great back and forth, and I hope they build upon that in the future installments of Spider-Man, or in future MCU films in general. And then Peter's like, oh my god, I gotta tell Nick Fury. And then Nick Fury is supposedly supposed to be at the conference in Berlin. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Berlin. And he's like, okay, I gotta go tell Nick Fury. He finds Nick Fury, or he thought he found Nick Fury. He's like, Mysterio, he's been faking it all along. Oh my god. And then he finds out it was Mysterio's plan for him to find Nick Fury. And that fight scene, if you want to call it, I don't know, Mysterio just absolutely whooped Spider-Man's booty in that fight. But that fight scene was so good because you don't know what's real and what's not. Like that one part where he's at the grave of Tony's grave, and then the Iron Man suit comes up with a skull. Oh, that was pretty scary stuff. That fight scene was so well done, and it kind of felt a little bit like, because you don't know what's fake and what's not fake, and it felt a little bit like the fight scene in John Wick Chapter 3 with all the mirrors. It's like, what's a reflection, what's not a reflection? It felt like that fight scene, but that action sequence was my favorite action sequence by far in the whole entire film. And this movie has some brilliant action sequences. It's probably some of my favorite Spidey action in all the Spidey movies. And I thought that action sequence was just phenomenal. And then obviously leads to Mysterio just pushing Peter back into the rails, to the railroad track, and then the train just smacks him, and then you're like, whoa, he just got hit really, really hard. And then Mysterio thinks he kills him, but he's Spider-Man. He cannot die. It's Spidey. And then you find out he is alive. And then the scene after, I actually think it was the scene before this, it shows basically Mysterio going through his whole game plan. Basically, he uses the drones, which I thought was really creative of them using drones as using the hallucinations or being part of his scheme. I thought that was really creative on him using the drones. And it basically showed the VFX process. He even had like a mocap suit going on there, and then you realize, oh, this guy's just a normal human being. He's just so good at doing his tricks. And I thought that was a great scene. I saw more of, it felt very reminiscent a little bit of his performances like in Nightcrawler and some of his other performances, even Velvet Buzzsaw, which was a Netflix film that I liked. I know most people didn't, but Jake Gyllenhaal had a fantastic performance there. And then you realize that the group that he's working with was also a part of that. They were also fired by Tony Stark for many different reasons that I do not remember because my brain is not that great, either though it is great. And then after that, Peter calls somebody and he's like, I need you to pick me up. And then you realize it's Happy. And he arrives in his jet above the cauliflower field, I believe it was. And the scene between Peter and Happy when they're just talking was my favorite scene in the whole entire movie. It was amazing. It was their heart-to-heart moment again. And then that's when Happy tells him, you're all alone, your friends are gone, what are you gonna do? And you see it in the trailer, but that part was great. It was really great, but that's not the moment that really hit me in that scene. The moment that made me realize, I'm like, this is the best scene in the whole entire movie, was when Happy shows him the I don't know what to call it, the room where Peter can build his Spider-Man suit. Basically kind of like Tony did with the Iron Man suit. Now I've heard complaints, oh my god, that's just like Tony with his Iron Man suits. Now I get that complaint, but that moment was just so good. It was amazing. And then you see Peter playing around with the little holograms, and then Happy's just watching him, and then Peter turns around and he's like, what? He's like what are you looking, like, why are you watching me? And then Happy's just like, nothing. Oh, it got me so much. Like, oh, that scene was just so good when he's just like, nothing. But you knew he was watching because he's like this. He's just like Tony. He loves playing around with his toys, and it was just so good. Oh, this is making me cry already. And then Happy turns on the music, and it's AC/DC. Oh yes, when I'm like, yes, and then Peter's like, oh, I love Led Zeppelin. Oh, that was such a great comedic moment, but that scene was so good. Yeah, the action sequences were great, the comedic moments were great, the relationship between Peter and MJ was fantastic, and the scenes between them were fantastic, but that scene was the standout of all the scenes in the film. It was just amazing. And then they fly to London, I believe, obviously, because that's where Mysterio leads the group, and then Mysterio starts to cause the ruckus, and then that's where all of the elementals, the fake elementals, come together and they become this big, powerful elemental, obviously by the drones, which were used brilliantly, I think, in all the action sequences. And Mysterio's like, okay, we got him. He knows that Peter's dead, or he thinks he's dead, and and Nick Fury is supposedly there. And Mysterio tells Nick Fury, oh, this elemental's going to show up in London at this time. And Nick Fury's, all right, do your thing. Beat this elemental up, because if you don't, then we're screwed. But little does he realize that it was just all a trick. All a trick. That's right, folks. Nick Fury got tricked. That rarely ever happens. And Mysterio then starts to fight the elemental, but it's always just a trick. And then Spidey shows up in his red and black suit, which is my favorite Spidey suit out of all the movies. It is amazing. And then Happy tells Nick Fury a code, I forgot what the secret word was, that Mysterio has been faking it all along. And then Nick Fury is like, alright, I get it. And then that line when Mysterio, I forgot what he said, and then Nick Fury turns to Maria Hill and he's like, that's just a complete lie. And he said something similar to that. I forgot what he said, but he said something similar to that, and I thought that was another great comedic moment. And then Spidey rolls in there, and then he swings around and he finds the drones controlling the elemental, and he starts destroying it until Mysterio is like, what is that? Oh, he guess he's not dead. And then he finds a way to bring Peter to him, and he's protected by these drones, and then Peter fights off the drones to then get to Mysterio, and then realizes that Mysterio is just a normal human being. And at the end of the fight, Mysterio ends up dying. Now look, I really enjoyed Mysterio. I thought he was a great character in this movie. I wish he didn't die, but Marvel's the king of fake deaths, obviously, as we know. I mean, Loki has had fake deaths. I'm sure Vision's gonna come back, and the Dusted People, fake deaths. Black Panther's had a fake death. There's been a bunch of fake deaths. It's been absolutely nuts. Now he might come back some way, somehow. I hope he does, even though I'm not a big fan of fake deaths. But whatever, it was amazing while we had Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, but then he has his death. And then Spider-Man's like, yay, yay, yay. But speaking of that fight, though, Spider-Man gets beat up in that fight. He gets burnt. He gets smacked around. He gets shot at. And it is just like, whoa. And then you obviously have Happy on the other side protecting the kids from harm. And that was also great. And then finally, Spider reunites with MJ. And they have their first kiss. And it was just like, aww. And then that's the end of the fight scene, and then you have your resolution. He goes back to New York, and then he reunites with Aunt May, and then that moment when she's like, where's your luggage? Where's your luggage? And he's like, it got destroyed, remember? And she's like, oh, yeah, right. Because she knows he's Spider-Man. And then they drive back. It's all amazing. And then he has his first date with MJ, just swinging around New York. I thought that was a great scene. Obviously, you gotta have some sort of scene with Spider-Man swinging around with MJ. And then that's where it ends off until the post-credit scenes. Now let's talk about the post-credit scenes. The first one, obviously, I loved both post-credit scenes. I thought they were great. Now the first one, it starts off with Peter landing on the ground, dropping MJ, and then he jumps up, and then look, I would have, before I watched Far From Home, I'd be like, if J.K. Simmons came back as Jonah Jameson, that would be amazing. That would be so great, because he was so terrific as him in the original Raimi trilogy, and he was the standout of Spider-Man 3, obviously, because I mean, was the standout of Spider-Man 3 other than him. And then he comes up. Oh my god! I had absolute nerd chills. I heard some nerd squeals. Probably came from me, and it was awesome. And then he reports that he shows the video that Mysterio took before he died, of him saying, oh, this was all Spider-Man's fault. All the previous events in Europe, that was all Spider-Man's fault. And then Peter's like, what the? And then as soon as he's about to drop the F-bomb, it cuts to the credits. Now look, what does this mean? I think this is a great setup for Spider-Man in the future of Phase 4. I think it can enhance the character. I have no clue what they're going to do with this, which I love. It felt a little bit like the end of John Wick Chapter 2, where John Wick goes excommunicado, and everybody's against him. Now, we've seen in comic books that the fans of Spider-Man have been divided. Some hate him, some love him. And we're definitely going to see that, and I cannot wait to see what they do with Spider-Man in the future of Phase 4. And I thought it was a great mid-credit scene. And I hope we see J.K. Simmons come back, because if we don't, I'm going to hunt Kevin Feige down and be like, you only did one thing wrong with the MCU. You only used J.K. Simmons for one scene. What is wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. But it was awesome seeing J.K. Simmons return. And so I thought that post-credit scene was awesome. And then you have the end credit scene. And you see Maria Hill and Nick Fury driving and talking something. And then all of a sudden you see them transform. You're like, wait, what? And you see them transform into the Skrulls. You're like, what is happening? And then you realize that Nick Fury has been up in space chilling on some Skrull spaceship the whole time, just on vacation. You're like, how long has this been happening? How long is this what he's been doing? Like, because people were like, where's Nick Fury during Civil War? Was he in space the whole time? And so how long have Skrulls been impersonating Nick Fury? Was Nick Fury really at Tony's funeral? I'm pretty sure he was, or else I'll take out the whole heart of it. Well, it's like, how long has this been going on? What is Nick Fury up to on that ship? Because you see a bunch of Skrulls on there. They look like they're working on something that I'm sure will have to do with another key plot point in Phase 4. And it's awesome seeing that they're still using the Skrulls. And I also really enjoy this end credit scene. I still probably put the first one over the end credit scene. But I thought both of them were really cool and definitely set up some key plot points into Phase 4. I cannot wait to see what they do with Spider-Man / Peter Parker in Phase 4, seeing that people are like, what? Spider-Man's the one to blame for, not Mysterio. So at the end of the day, Mysterio kind of won, just like how I would say Heath Ledger's Joker kind of won at the end of Dark Knight. But anyways, both end credit scene was awesome. I loved the movie. The relationship between Peter and MJ was great. The action sequences were fantastic. Beautiful comedic moments. Obviously, I went through a lot of them. Awesome emotional moments. That airplane scene between Happy and Peter was the best. And Jake Gyllenhaal's performance as Mysterio is also fantastic. And I love the post-credit scenes. I cannot wait to see what they do with Peter Parker / Spider-Man into Phase 4. And what they do with the Skrulls later on. Is there a Skrull base on Earth? There's just so many questions. And I hope that they give us some answers, because I cannot wait to see what Kevin Feige does with the MCU. And he's just a genius. He's just a genius. Now, oh man, that was another fantastic episode of the Kid Kritic Podcast. We talked about some great stuff. We talked about Stranger Things. Great season. We talked about Little Mermaid for a bit. We talked about Flash for a bit. We talked about Steelbooks. We talked about comparing genres and some other fun stuff. And then obviously we had our Spider-Man Far From Home in-depth spoiler review. And I loved this movie. And I thought this was a fantastic episode. We talked about some great stuff. And with that said, guys, tell me down in the comment section below what was great about this episode of the podcast. How can we make this podcast better? Because that's what we love, is to get better. And make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or start following the podcast if you're on Spotify, iTunes, Castbox, or any other podcast app or service that this podcast is on. But those are the ones that I know for sure are on there. I'm trying to get it on Apple Podcasts and all that other stuff. But I thought this was a great episode. We talked about some wonderful topics. And with all that said, guys, look out for the next video, review, trailer reaction that I post on the Kid Kritic YouTube channel. Make sure to check that out and subscribe there. And with that said, guys, look out for the next episode of the Kid Kritic Movie Podcast, where we talk about movies and all that other fun stuff. And Peace.